Salam everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. Today I'll be showing you guys in this video some brunch ideas slash birthday lunch ideas. And this is because later you will see in the video that I've decorated 2 cakes, and that is because I celebrated a birthday actually on this day, and that's why, I have the cakes. But these meals that I'll be cooking for you guys today, and I'll showing you guys what I prepared, are not limited to only birthdays, so you can technically make this for any time of the day. I personally like it for brunch, but you can also use it for lunch or dinner or any other meal as well. The ingredients, both for the vegan and the non-vegan, are as follows: lemon juice, freshly squeezed and packaged, sour cream, pickle juice, Greek yogurt, sriracha, and Dijon mustard. Then we have veganese, which is the vegan alternative to the mayo. And for the spices, I have cayenne pepper, celery, fennel, dillweed, parsley, and thyme for the dry herbs, and garlic and onion powder. So starting off with the non-vegan recipe, I just started off with some Greek yogurt, and I did about 3 heaping tablespoons. And again, all the measurements are just something that I made, and I ended up needing a lot more at the end because it was kind of dry. So if you are going to be using this recipe, make sure you use it accordingly to however many ingredients you have. Then I did the mayo, which was about another 3 heaping tablespoons. And then I did the sour cream, which was 2.5 heaping tablespoons. And then I did a teaspoon of lemon juice and about 1 tablespoon of salt, and I just whisked those ingredients together. So after about a minute of whisking, you really want to make sure that you're whisking these ingredients really well, so just take your time and whisk. So after whisking, I added about 2 teaspoons of black pepper. So right now, you'll just see me add 1 teaspoon, and then I whisked it together, and I realized that I think I put a little less, so I put another teaspoon. So altogether, 2 teaspoons of black pepper. And then I put 1.5 teaspoons of Dijon mustard, and lastly about 2 teaspoons of sriracha, and then I whisked those together as well. So moving on to the other spices, I'm going to be using garlic and onion powder now. And for the garlic powder, I used about 1 teaspoon, more or less. And then I whisked that all together. And after making sure that it was fully whisked, I used about 1 teaspoon of onion powder, more or less. Next, I put in about half a teaspoon of celery powder, and then I whisked that. Oh no, I didn't whisk it together. I put another half of a teaspoon of fennel, and then I whisked those two ingredients together. And like I said, I'm going to be using a lot of spices, so I want to make sure that I do about 2 or 3 at a time and then whisk them together. And I just want to note that for these herbs, I don't want them to be overpowering, so I did move over to using actual measuring spoons instead of the regular spoons. So next I'm putting about half a teaspoon of dill weed, which is actually one of my favorite herbs to use in dressings for salads and vegetables and stuff like that. And then I whisk that together as well. So next I do about half a teaspoon of parsley and then half a teaspoon of thyme as well, and I whisk those together. So now at this point, we're pretty much done with the spices for the non-vegan recipe, and I'm going to be moving to the liquids, but I just want to mention that if you guys don't prefer this many spices or herbs, or the measurements seem to be too much or too little, you guys can definitely switch this up to your liking, so you can definitely put more or less. So now we're going to be using liquids to kind of break the fat of the mayo, different types of liquids that have different acidity levels. The first one is pickle juice, and for this I'll be using about 2.5 teaspoons. For some reason I was using still the half a teaspoon measurements, but I used 5 of those, so it just adds up to 2.5 teaspoons. And then I whisk together. And next, I just squeeze as much juice I could squeeze out of this lemon as possible. And lastly, I used apple cider vinegar, and of course, if you are not fond of apple cider vinegar, you can definitely use regular vinegar or white vinegar, distilled vinegar, any vinegar of your choice, but vinegar is a really good liquid to break the fats of this dressing. And I used just the cap size, and I am assuming it's about 1/4 of a teaspoon, but I'm not sure. So now that I've finally finished with the vegan recipe, it's time to assemble them. And I first started off with the purple cabbage, so I just wanted to layer it so that if you put the dressing all at once, it's going to be very dry and you're not going to be able to mix it well. And then I put in pretty much most, not all, but most of the dressing. And then I put the green cabbage on top and then finished up with the rest of the dressing and just used a mixer, a tosser, salad tosser, to just mix all that up. last ingredient that I decided to add, which is completely optional, were raisins. I like some foods to be kind of a little bit sweet, so I decided to add raisins, but if you do not like raisins, that is fine. You can definitely leave this out the recipe. So now moving on to the vegan recipe. So in this vegan recipe, since I'll be using a lot less types of liquids, like in the first one we used sour cream and yogurt, since I won't be using those things, I used a lot more veganese. So I used about 5 teaspoons of veganese, and actually later on I'll be adding one more because I still feel like there wasn't enough. And after that, I added about 1 heaping tablespoon of Dijon mustard, and then about 1 heaping tablespoon of sriracha, and those were the 3 main ingredients because everything else will be spices. Then I added about 1 tablespoon of salt, just a little bit under 1 tablespoon of salt, and whisked that together. So for the next spices, these are going to be all the herbs, and I used the same measurements for the following. So I did about 1/4 of a teaspoon of fennel, and then I did 1/4 teaspoon of dill, 1/4 teaspoon of celery, 1/4 teaspoon of parsley, and 1/4 teaspoon of thyme. And then for the black pepper, I kind of eyeballed it, so I think I went a little bit less than 1/4 teaspoon. Same goes for the cayenne pepper. I think I did a little bit less than the black pepper, but again, cayenne pepper is kind of spicy, so make sure you put it according to taste. If you like spicy, put a little bit more spice, and if you don't, a little bit less. And lastly, I didn't really measure out the lemon juice, but I just squeezed the rest of this bottle. I would say probably 1 teaspoon, I'm not sure. I just used a good amount, and then I used about 3 teaspoons of pickle juice, and I whisked that together, and I used the same amount of apple cider vinegar that I did for the vegan recipe. I'm not sure why this video cut out, but it did, so you don't see the rest of it. Okay, so then again, we are done with this recipe as well. So now it's time to assemble. I did the same exact thing I did with the other one, and I just put the purple cabbage first, then the sauce, a little bit of the sauce, and then the green cabbage on top, and finish it off with the remainder of the sauce, and I toss it together, and I put raisins in this one as well. So now that we've finally finished with our 2 coleslaws, we're moving on to the last recipe, and this is the cucumber slash tomato salad. So for the ingredients I'll be using is olive oil, balsamic vinegar, which is our source of acidity, a green salad dressing that is from Trader Joe's, blush wine vinaigrette, and salt, black pepper, basil, and oregano for the seasonings. Since the coleslaws were very heavily seasoned, I wanted to keep this very fresh and very light, so I just wanted to stick to something more simple. So for the measurements of these ingredients, I used about 5 teaspoons of olive oil, and then I used 2 teaspoons of balsamic vinegar, 3 teaspoons of the green salad dressing, then 3 teaspoons of the blush pink vinaigrette. Then for the spices, I used about 1 tablespoon of salt. Since we're going to be using lots of tomatoes, you want to make sure that you're salting this properly, so make sure you're tasting it as you go because tomatoes tend to need a lot of salt. And then I pretty much whisked those ingredients together. Next, I added about 1 teaspoon of black pepper, and then I whisked that together. Next, I added in the cucumbers and the tomatoes, and just make sure that that was all in before I added my spices. And lastly, I sprinkled in a little bit of the basil and the oregano. I didn't really measure it, I just eyeballed it. Again, I didn't really want too much, so I'm assuming I used pretty much under 1/4 of a teaspoon for each. So moving on, the following items you'll see are crackers, dates, mixed nuts, wasabi beans, seaweed, dried cranberries, pretzel sticks, dark chocolate covered pretzels, chopped walnuts, cranberry almond cookies that are thinly sliced, regular mini pretzels, yogurt covered pretzels, sweet potato chips, and biscuits. So all of these are the dry items I'll be using for the first cheese board item, or charcuterie board as its more formal name, and I'll be making different types of charcuterie boards, and this is just the first one. So basically for the next few minutes, you're just going to be seeing me place these items. Now I didn't have any prior idea to what design that I wanted to place this in, so I'm just making this up on the spot as I go. I'm just seeing what works and what doesn't work, what colors go together, and shapes and stuff like that, and I'm arranging it as I see it. So this is a really fun activity to do if you just want to be a little bit creative and have some fun, because every charcuterie board can look different. There is no technical way to make this, so just be creative and make it your own. So I just started off with crackers because they were the biggest item, and then I just kept going with the pretzels and all the other items until the entire board is filled. So my favorite part was adding the green little bits and pieces here. So I first started off with the seaweed, and I was originally going to place each of them out individually, but it came in a clear box, so I decided why not just put the whole box in the center of the cookies. And then I used the wasabi piece and I put it in little circles here and there. And like I mentioned earlier, there is no technical way to make a cheese board. You can just make it your own, but I think a really good technique to use to make it very vibrant and really nice to look at is having different types of colors here and there. So the last thing I add in this small white bowl are the pretzel sticks, and we are pretty much done with our first charcuterie board, which is all the dry ingredients. And so we're going to be moving on to the second cheese board, which is going to be the chips and the biscuits. And like I mentioned, I'll say it again one more time, there was no particular order or design that I had in mind. I just decided that since this one was smaller and we're going to be using a lot less items, I just wanted to place it in a different shape. So I just put all the chips in a circular shape, and then I just put the biscuits in almost kind of like a wing, like a butterfly wing shape. So I just put originally 3 on each side, but then I put 4 to fill up the space, and then I put the dates sort of in the middle in a zigzag kind of design, so it kind of looks like a butterfly almost. So moving on to the dips, now that we're done with our second charcuterie board. These dips are vegan, and I'll be using 3 different dips in this video. The first one is going to be hummus, and then I have this spicy guacamole, and I'm pretty sure later on I also use a vegan cream cheese. Ingredients now are for the actual cheese board, and it is aged cheddar, Jarlsberg, creamy Havarti, and Dutch Gouda. Then Babel, which is these red balls, rosemary leaves that I just used for decoration purposes, and in this Wisconsin Cheeseman box, there is Edam cheese, Swiss, Colby, smoked Gouda, and mild cheddar, and lastly, these triangular slices are just spreadable cream cheese. The first thing I did was cut up the slices of Edam cheese. Next, I arranged the rosemary leaves like a circle, like almost resembling a wreath. Then I put the Babel cheeses in random spots like ornaments almost, and because it is Christmas time, I just want it to be festive. For the actual cheese in the middle, I put the block of cheese, the Edam cheese first, and then the slices that I cut from that cheese. Next, I put the cream cheese in a pattern, and at first I used a pattern that was horizontal and then I changed it. And then lastly, thin slices of the cheddar and Gouda cheese one by one. Now that we're done the cheese board, moving on to the fruit, I'll be using blueberries, raspberries, cherries, grapes, strawberries, blackberries, green grapes, and kiwis. So for the fruit charcuterie board, I wanted to do something interesting, so I placed all the fruits in a shape of a Christmas tree, and I first started with the kiwis, and so I put the kiwis on the first layer, then strawberries, then green grapes, raspberries, blueberries, and then lastly I put the cherries around the tree like ornaments, and I left this part out, but you can use pretzel sticks as the tree stump. Now that I finished the fruit board, the last thing I'll be plating are the olives and the last dip. So the first type of olive is the green olives, and then I have the Kalamata olives, and I'll be placing those in clear bowls along with the vegan cream cheese as the last dip. So now that we've finished everything, all the meals that I've made and the different types of charcuterie boards, this is one final tour that I'll be giving you everything close up and in detail. So what you see now is a quick fruit punch that I made with only 3 ingredients: orange peach mango juice, cranberry juice, and sparkling water and ice. These glass cups, I just put some cherries inside. So moving on to the food that I didn't show you guys prior, I just have vegan egg rolls, French fries, and a plate of cucumber and tomato slices, and everything else that you see are the foods that I've already prepared earlier. So moving on to the mini sweet bar, I just have Kit Kat, Ferrero Rocher, Lindor, Oreos, vegan cookies, Hershey Kisses, and I just placed a few candles here and there for a festive. If you've made it this far, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate your time and your feedback, so please make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe, and turn on the post notification bell so that you can be notified every time I post. See you guys next week. Ciao!